This is David Bell, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. You're listening to the Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast.
And welcome in to the Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast and live stream tonight. My name is Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. Also, I encourage you to hit the red subscribe button. It's been a lot of fun growing this community over the last month and a half or so. Lots of new subscribers. Want to welcome you in. I love doing these live streams and podcasts. I encourage you through your comments and questions and start sits in the comments section for this video and live stream. I love to answer them. It's one of my favorite things to do for this community. I want to give an update as well before I get into some of the players I want to chat about starting and sitting this week. In addition to your start sit questions that you can throw in the comments. This past week, I finished 56th out of over 200 rankers in the Fantasy Pros Accuracy Rankings contest. Right now, season to date, I'm 24th out of over 200 fantasy rankers and 9th among wide receivers. So, this is a lot of fun, an honor to compete on behalf of Fantasy Data. If you missed my live stream on Fantasy Data earlier tonight, you can check that out. My Fantasy Data article also dropped, so I encourage you to check that out. And this is one of those things, one of those contests where it proves to be, if you're bold, you're going to be rewarded. And I want to say that some of my calls are going to be a little bold this week, and that's okay. Partly through the rose-colored eyes that I have and trying to get into that top 10. It's really hard to be a top 10 ranker. It's not easy in this industry. We've got some very, very smart people who do this for a full-time job. And I teach full-time. I'm an instructional coach. And so I just want to say that, this is not my full-time job, but maybe in the future, one day I can do this full-time. And with this community growing together, this would be, a dream. So, let's make this dream a reality. I'd love to, help everyone. And that's why I put these live streams on, not just for me, but also for you too, to help us grow together and be better in our community. All right, without further ado, we're going to start with our first start sit of the week, and that is D'Onta Foreman. I think D'Onta Foreman is a very solid start. He should be viewed as a mid-pack running back 2, former third-round pick out of Texas. This was a player who there were high aspirations. He was a day 2 pick for the Houston Texans back in 2017, and after right at the beginning of the 2018 season, tore his Achilles. Took a season off 2019. He made it back in 2020, somehow got 22 carries that year. But then in 2021, D'Onta Foreman, in relief of Derrick Henry, had some really awesome games. He finishes the running back 26th, week 10, with only 11 carries, 78 total yards. He had 2 receptions in that game. He finishes running back 25 against New England, 19 carries, 6 red zone carries. Week 14 against Jacksonville, finishes the running back 15. Week 15, he finishes the running back 11. Week 17, finishes the running back 13. So this is not only within the range of outcomes, but D'Onta Foreman has been getting carries this season too. In fact, if you were looking at the splits between Chuba Hubbard and D'Onta Foreman, Foreman was the one who was getting more of the carries. And now in week 7, yes, Chuba Hubbard was declared as the starter, and he had gotten the majority of the work and snaps before the injury. But in week 7 against Tampa Bay, who we thought was a pretty good run defense, 15 carries for over 145 total yards, 2 receptions, finishes the running back 17 last week in full PPR. D'Onta Foreman now is not competing with Chuba Hubbard and gets the Atlanta Falcons defense, who ranks 19th in running back points given up this year. So not a negative matchup. It's not really going to move the needle that Atlanta doesn't give up a lot of running back fantasy points through the air. D'Onta Foreman's going to get bulk of the carries, 15 to 18 carries at least, and that's going to get him volume enough for top 20 running back upside. All right, let's jump into the comments. Braden Wagner from YouTube. Time to panic or stay with Jonathan Taylor? You're staying with Jonathan Taylor. You're going to have to fire him up. I talked about this last week with Felix Castro, who jumped on the Saturday night live stream. And on that live stream, I mentioned that you should be starting Jonathan Taylor, but it was a tough defense. The Tennessee Titans defense was very tough against the run. So you have to just acknowledge that, Taylor has had difficult matchups. He's faced Tennessee not once, but twice now, and hasn't gotten over 100 total yards against them. And now Jonathan Taylor this week gets the Washington football team, the Commanders, now 17th in running back points allowed, 19th in running back points allowed through the air. So I don't think there's reason to panic really for Jonathan Taylor. I mean, he's getting the 9th highest opportunity share, 6th highest snap share. He's playing a lot of snaps. He's running a lot of routes, right? He has the 16th most targets. It's not like he's not being targeted in this Indy offense. And Ehlinger, as a mobile quarterback, I think, in fact, opens things up a little bit more. You have to respect Ehlinger as a pocket presence. His mobility was noticeable at Texas, ran for over 1,900 yards during his 3.5 years as the starter there for the Longhorns. So I think that this is maybe a good thing for Jonathan Taylor, that, teams have to respect the mobility of the quarterback. And we've seen rushing quarterbacks help the efficiency metrics of running backs in their same backfield. So there we go. I don't think it's at all time to panic for Taylor. But if you want to lateral move to Christian McCaffrey, I'm fine with that. If someone's offering you Christian McCaffrey for Jonathan Taylor straight up, I don't blink one way or the other. But I wouldn't. This is not a sell low opportunity. You're just riding the wave with Jonathan Taylor, and he fell on the wrong side. He's fallen on the wrong side of variance. Lately, he only has, one total touchdown on the season. So I'm not too worried about Taylor. He's going to bounce back. And the Washington Commanders just gave up a top tier running back performance to Aaron Jones, not mostly through the ground, but through the air. And Jonathan Taylor right now, yes, he may be 16th in targets, but that includes him missing a game. The amount of routes, has the 8th highest route participation among running backs. I'm not worried about Jonathan Taylor. He's going to get involved in this offense. Stay with him, Braden. Keep strong. Keep the faith, Braden. You got this. Jose's jumping on the live stream. Hey, Bradley, what's up? Lawrence or Stafford to start this week? Oh, man. This is not a nice one, because I've been out on Trevor Lawrence the last couple of weeks, but I do have Lawrence slightly ahead of Matthew Stafford. I think the San Francisco defense is very, very difficult, and I know they're coming off the bye, but Matthew Stafford is 25th right now in quarterback points. It's not looked good for him. If you look, he hasn't finished in above quarterback 10 this year. And he has all but one of his finishes as quarterback 18 or worse. So Matthew Stafford, at least you've seen upside with Trevor Lawrence. That's the thing, is as much as Trevor Lawrence has had his ups and downs, Trevor Lawrence has had 3 20 or worse fantasy finishes this year, but he's had 3 top 7 quarterback performances. And he goes against Denver, who is a tough pass defense as well. So if they're both tough pass defenses, I want to go with the guy who's shown the ceiling so far this year, and that's clearly been Trevor Lawrence. So that's who I would go with. Warrior Loft from YouTube. Hey, what's up, bro? Appreciate you jumping on the YouTube. Yeah, just like Warrior Loft, make sure that you are throwing your comments or questions in the live stream on YouTube, or if you're on Twitch, throw them on there. Also, make sure that you're hitting the subscribe button, just like everyone else. Hit that red subscribe button so that you know when I go live. and we can chat. Okay, so hopefully I'll be able to get another one of these in tomorrow. That's great. And then next week, next Saturday, I believe, I'm getting Drico from RotoViz to jump on the Saturday stream. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then on the 19th of November, so a couple weeks away, I've got Theo Greminger of the Goat District podcast is going to jump on as well. So that's a lot of things to look forward to, having some great guests come on. So it's not just going to be me dealing with my beautiful mug, but you're going to have some other experts in the industry jumping in. We're going to all chat about some of your questions too. So make sure you throw your comments in where the comments go. Ask your questions, start them, sit them. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk about some players that I want to talk, start and sit, but also yours as well. So we'll get to them. I'm going to interweave them throughout. So have patience as we go through. Warrior Loft, thanks so much. And you're asking a question about a flex. Dameon Pierce versus a tough Titans D, DeAndre Hopkins versus the Vikings, or Donta Foreman versus a mid-tier versus the Falcons. This is DeAndre Hopkins. I'm going Hopkins here. You can't deny what kind of target share he was getting. I know it's not a high ADOT, but we're talking 12 to 15 targets you can safely project for DeAndre Hopkins, and against a Vikings team that I feel like these games are going to turn into shootouts. Like the Arizona Cardinals versus the Vikings, I want in on this game. I'm starting Irv Smith Jr. I'm starting DeAndre Hopkins. I'm starting Kirk Cousins. You're already starting Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. You're starting Kyler Murray if you have him. You're probably going to start Eno Benjamin unless Darrell Williams. I don't know. He's questionable right now. We will find out about Darrell Williams and Eno Benjamin. I think Eno is less of a start if Darrell Williams is active. But I will go DeAndre Hopkins here. Yeah, I know you were leaning Foreman, so I would disagree with DeAndre Hopkins here. The target share is just so immense. I mean, he tied CeeDee Lamb with the highest target share on an individual game with 50% last week. Week 1, they're going to get him involved, and Marquise Brown is out. It's going to be the DeAndre Hopkins show. So there you go. Billy Muzio, friend of the podcast, former guest of the podcast, former partner. Love you, Billy. Thanks for jumping on. What do you think of Green Bay being 11-point dogs for Josh Allen and the Bills? Okay, you just came on here to troll me, Billy. As you can tell, the Bakhtiari jersey is behind me, the Lazard jersey, and Billy actually is the one who got me the Tunyon jersey after we talked about Tunyon breaking out a couple years ago. So hats off to you, Billy. Line moved a half point today with Lazard being ruled out. It's a disaster zone. And if you were listening to the podcast earlier this offseason, the Best Bell Fantasy Football podcast, I was extremely worried about the Green Bay Packers. I did not think they had enough offensive juice. I was skeptical about Romeo Doubs, and it looked bad for that call at the beginning of the year when Doubs was getting a lot of deep targets. He just has not completed. He's not stepped up. He's made a lot of mental errors. Aaron Rodgers, yes, has missed him on some passes. I don't want to disregard, Rodgers' thumb injury that like everyone's been hush-hush about. Like, oh, he's just missing passes. No, like Aaron Rodgers is dealing with a thumb injury. Nobody wants to really talk about it, and it is affecting his deep passes. And so with the loss of Randall Cobb, I think that safety outlet is immense for him. And then losing Lazard this week, it's disastrous. So I think that, Billy, you're right. Like, this is a really bad match. That's what you're implying, but it could be even worse. Like, Rodgers came on the Pat McAfee show and was like, essentially like, I'm not too worried. Like, we're going to surprise some people. And like, no, you're not going to surprise anybody. Like, who are you going to surprise them with? Aaron Jones? Like, we already just saw Aaron Jones get bottled up against the Washington Commanders this past week on the ground. You're going to allow, of course, the Bills are going to let, him dink and dunk his way to 13 fantasy points, at least from Rodgers' perspective. So this is bad news for Green Bay. They shouldn't have drafted Christian Watson. They should have gone with George Pickens. That would have been my pick, or even Wan'Dale Robinson. You know that Amari Rodgers isn't the answer in the slot. And Randall Cobb is old and crusty, but he had like a 90-yard game one of those games. So there you go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Billy, I know that was a cheap shot because of the Packers fan. Warrior Loft, at this point, Christian McCaffrey greater than JT. Very few people will give you that offer. And that's fair. But it's always worth testing your league just to find out. Okay. Because there are some JT stands, they've held on to their priors, whatever. Maybe they're fearful of the role that Christian McCaffrey is going to have with Kittle and Ayuk and well, Debo's ruled out, but still, I mean, Christian McCaffrey is the way I think going forward. Yeah. uh, I agree, Warrior Loft, Billy. I hate to say it, but it looks like a complete blowout. Yeah, it's going to be pretty bad. I don't know if 44-17, but it's not going to be good. And I don't see a path to success for the Green Bay Packers. Like they lost Lazard, they lost Cobb, and AJ Dillon isn't even being involved. He played 13 snaps against the Commanders this past week. Like, AJ Dillon's a decent player. He's a solid running back 2 on a team. He can step in for Aaron Jones. He can catch balls out of the backfield at 90% completion or reception rate last year. AJ Dillon is nice, but that's the reality. So, the San Francisco defense has beat up the Rams. Get Jefferson back too. Yeah, Van Jefferson doesn't move the needle for me. Sorry, Billy. Okay, we're going to talk about another running back this week that I am higher than consensus, and that's Miles Sanders. I think he's a top 12 back this week. It's a major plus matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. The Philadelphia Eagles come off of their bye, and Miles Sanders is a big time play. Okay, you want Miles Sanders in your starting for you. Looking over the last few games in half PPR, Miles Sanders has finished as, well, the running back 14, running back 3, running back 18, running back 11. I think running back 12 against a Pittsburgh defense that just gave up a top 6 finish to Raheem Mostert. Yeah, get me in on that. I want Miles Sanders there. Of course, you're starting Jalen Hurts. I was really tempted to put A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith up even higher over consensus, but Miles Sanders is trusted to just salt the game away. This could be very much a blowout, and Miles Sanders is going to be the one to get the run. And this is probably the last day. If you're trying to sell Miles Sanders, this is probably the last day to do so. There have been rumors swirling about Alvin Kamara going to the Philadelphia Eagles, but the Saints are obviously asking for their first round pick back. And if I were the Eagles, I would be hesitant to give that back. Howie Roseman's probably like trying to conjure up something. And I think that this is the last week. The Eagles seem to be tied to improving their running back core, at least maybe preserving Miles Sanders. They have been using him a lot more lately. So there you go. I mean, look at what Miles Sanders has done this year. 13, 17, 15, 27, 15, and 18 carries. No fewer than 13. We've seen even 27 when they're salting the game away against Jacksonville. Yes, Miles Sanders, top 12. There we go. All right, we'll keep moving on to some of the comments. Lincoln was here. A guy is offering me JJ and Ertz for Andrews and CMC. It's 1.5 tight end premium dynasty. I still have Kelsey and Dulcich, so I'll have good tight ends, still have good running backs with Joe Mixon, Kamara, and Zeke. So let's look at the price tag, or look at like the depreciation of running back. Christian McCaffrey is already on his second contract. He's already been traded. It's a new offense, I know, but short-term Andrews and McCaffrey is going to get you there, but JJ and Zach Ertz will probably last longer. Now JJ will last longer, but Ertz, I don't think so. That's the end of the line for him. I would still lean Justin Jefferson and the Ertz side. I know that that's tough, but you have Kelsey already. So that's you're still going to start Kelsey and Dulcich. I don't think Dulcich is, going to be a starting tight end one for you in the next 2 years. But, getting that upgrade at your wide receiver spot for the long term at Justin Jefferson, for Christian McCaffrey to downgrade to Ertz and still keep Kelsey, I think that's fine. So, yes. Giving away 2 studs and only getting 1 back, I get it, though. Andrews' consistent 40-point games. Yeah, but what if Lamar doesn't return? I mean, that's a major concern in Dynasty. Is Joe Burrow is probably going to get an extension before Lamar Jackson is. Did I say that out loud? That's my bold take. I've been saying that for months. So there we go. Yeah, but you can, once again, trade back and still get some other pieces. I think the Christian McCaffrey piece, Lincoln was here, is what's going to depreciate the quick, or at least with Ertz, depreciate the quickest. Although Ertz is probably going to stick around for a while, consistently tight end 10, tight end 12, like the Jason Witten route where he's still relevant in 36. But yeah, I think keeping JJ for Andrews, that's going to be good for you. Okay. Warrior Loft, thanks a bunch. Testimonials right here. I think that Hopkins will get 1 to 2 touchdowns this week. That'll be real nice. I appreciate that for sure. I know Keenan Allen isn't playing this week, but I'm very curious what your thoughts are about him. It concerns me that it took this long for Keenan Allen to return from injury. And, shame on me for hoping that he would still return PPR value this year. I had a decent amount of Keenan Allen just in those PPR leagues, not in the half PPR, and only really stacking with Justin Herbert. But I was interested in seeing, Herbert and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler continue in this LA offense. But the early hamstring injury has really derailed the season. And that makes you wonder, what does the future hold for Keenan Allen? His efficiency metrics have steadily declined every year. Now, could he just be like this older age Golden Tate for the next 2 years if he's healthy? Sure. Like a flex consideration moving forward? Yeah. I think the days are gone where, even last year, Keenan Allen didn't have a wide receiver 1 week ever last year. Not 1 week was he like an elite wide receiver option. Yeah, he muddled in the wide receiver 12s and the wide receiver 14s and the wide receiver 16s. But the age cliff is hitting Keenan Allen, and that is being displayed through the longer recoveries from the soft tissue issues like the hamstring injuries. So Billy's jumping on. He agrees Allen is toast. That's putting it nicely. Okay. DeBrickshaw, thanks for jumping in. DeBrickshaw, appreciate you on the YouTube. Wan'Dale or Van Jefferson? Wan'Dale. Wan'Dale's a top 25 wide receiver in PPR for me this week. A little lower in half PPR, but I love Wan'Dale Robinson. The consensus is at 36 or so for him. But let me just double check. But I want to be higher than consensus on Wan'Dale Robinson. Yeah, actually, right now in my half PPR rankings on Fantasy Pros, I have him at wide receiver 24, and his consensus right now is the wide receiver 35. I think we forget DeBrickshaw, or let's not forget Wan'Dale Robinson. Oh my gosh, this is perfect because I actually had him up next in my queue. Wan'Dale Robinson so far this season, an 18.1% target share, 35.1 target rate. That is as high as Amon-Ra St. Brown this season. And he's being valued as a back-end wide receiver 3. No, this is Amon-Ra St. Brown 2.0. They just traded away Kadarius Toney. It's clear that it's Wan'Dale Robinson's job. It's clear. Wan'Dale Robinson's job. 35.1% target rate. He had 8 targets in the first half of the game before he suffered a crotch injury, which he's recovered from, by the way. Little Wan'Dale Robinson. But you have to be encouraged the way the Giants have just force-fed him the ball this season. Okay. 45.5% target rate versus man. When he's lined up man coverage, he beats his man, right? He's making plays out there, okay? And running routes that gets him open. Daniel Jones is looking for him close to the line of scrimmage. He's a safety valve. Yes, the New York Giants are missing like deep threats, and I'm sure they wish that Kenny Golladay was everything that they're paying him for. But Wan'Dale Robinson right now, like the trade of Kadarius Toney is an immense vote of confidence for Wan'Dale Robinson. I have him in 72% of my dynasty leagues. He was a player that I felt was undervalued in the pre-draft process. The Giants did not undervalue him. They drafted him in the second round this past year out of Kentucky. He's not even 22 years old. So Wan'Dale Robinson, yes, light years ahead of Van Jefferson. Okay. All right. Braden Wagner comes in and asks again about JT. You should not panic. You should stay with JT. Michael Valley from YouTube, Brian Robinson or David Montgomery this week? Well, let me pull up my rankings. This is one that I'm not really high on Brian Robinson. I have David Montgomery ranked ahead of Brian Robinson. Robinson gets the Indianapolis Colts. Montgomery is splitting carries and workload with Khalil Herbert in a much more significant way this year. And even in the last couple games, looking at what Montgomery has done, I mean, Montgomery gets Dallas, but Montgomery over the last 3 weeks was running back 17, 21, and 22 over the last 3 weeks. Khalil Herbert over the last 3 weeks has been the running back 70, 24, and 17. So, yes, 2 of the last 3 weeks, both Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery have been top 24 options. Khalil Herbert's the running back 34 in this expert consensus rankings, and I want to be a little higher than that. I know it's against Dallas, but they're going to have to manufacture touches. They're going to have to manufacture offense, and if it's not going to be done through David Montgomery, it's going to be done through, well, Justin Fields, of course. He's questioning almost the running back one on that team, but David Montgomery, I think, you have to lower a ceiling for him, but Ryan Robinson has an even lower ceiling. Antonio Gibson got more run last week. Antonio Gibson is the more dynamic pass catcher. He's the more dynamic runner. Brian Robinson is your prototypical first and second down, early down grinder. It's not going to get some breakaway runs. Antonio Gibson has those. So I think that the floor is just lower for Brian Robinson than it is for David Montgomery. And same thing with the ceiling. So I have them like shift down a little bit. I do have David Montgomery, though, ahead. Okay, Warrior Loft again. I'm good on running back, wide receiver for the most part. Someone dropped Hopkins after week 3. I got Damien in the 12th round. Waller's hurting me. Is this a fair trade? Trade Pierce, Hopkins, and Waller for Kelsey. If you are good at running back and wide receiver, like I don't know exactly what the rest of the team is, like to get that upgrade for Kelsey, yes, I think that is fine. Okay, you based on what you've given me, I think that's fine. That is not an unreasonable thing, especially if you're trading him to like a bad team. Like if this team needs depth and they're not a good team, like you're essentially picking off one of the best players off of a bad team and just making that bad team even worse because like Waller's not going to play this week. DeAndre Hopkins is probably a bump up from whatever wide receiver they have, but Dameon Pierce could go either way the rest of the season. We are encouraged by what we've seen out of Dameon Pierce so far, but as we've seen, like lower pedigree running backs don't oftentimes last the season. Like we saw James Robinson not last the full season a couple years ago. We've seen Eli Mitchell not last the full season. Like these lower draft capital running backs tend to lack in longevity. And this is a 17-game season. This isn't 16 games. Pierce, with that heavy workload, he didn't handle that volume of carries when he was in Florida. He only handled about 13 carries max per game. So I am concerned that longer term, Dameon Pierce is not going to pay off. And Kelsey upgrade to Waller if you're getting for Hopkins, I think that's fine. All right, I'm going to talk about a couple more players that I want to highlight this week, and then I'll get to more questions. So make sure you throw them in the comments and hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Okay, hit the red subscribe button. You know you want to join the community. It's a lot of fun. Appreciate y'all bantering and answering each other's questions too. It's great when the community is involved, answering questions, asking questions, making each other better on this live stream. All right, James Robinson just traded from the Jags to the Jets to replace Breece Hall. He's not going to be a startable running back for you in fantasy this week. Don't do it. Like, even in the most desperate of situations, it's going to be the Michael Carter show. And in desperate leagues, you'll throw Ty Johnson in your PPR spot, but I still don't think Ty Johnson is going to be a significantly involved. Robinson didn't get a carry in last week's game, and that was due to the knee injury, which he's been questionable for. And we may see a hot hand approach for the Jets, but the Jets know what they have in Michael Carter. Okay. And looking at what Michael Carter did last year, the Jets know what they have. They have a mid to back end running back two in decent matchups. And I know that the Jets get the New England Patriots this week. And the Patriots are real tough. So you have to downgrade all of the running backs in the Jets backfield. The New England gives up the 30th most. So only two teams are lower in fantasy points allowed rushing to the running back, and they're 21st in fantasy points allowed to the running back through the receiving. So still, it's a negative matchup for Michael Carter. It's why you have to rank Michael Carter outside of the top 24 for this week. Downgrade James Robinson. He's not startable this week. Don't get cute. You're going to have to wait and see with what kind of rotation James Robinson's going to be, but I do not expect him to handle a majority of the carries. Heck, for Michael Carter for last year, just for reference, I mean, he finished running back 25, and that was against New England last year. Running back 33, 24, 14, 12, 27, 17. I mean, he also had some 56s and 46s and 33s and 34s and 59s and 70s sprinkled in. It's a wide range of outcomes for Michael Carter, but at least we know it's weightily in the range of outcomes for Michael Carter to finish in that like 25 to 30 range is probably where I'm going to finalize my rankings for Michael Carter. But James Robinson is not a fantasy option this week, immediately after the trade. All right, a couple more questions here, and then we'll keep going. Lincoln was here, said, I'm win now team because my team's a bit older. I have to start one tight end. Could you start up to 3 tight ends? So I normally start Kelsey and Andrews together. Okay. Like, I'm not against it, but I think longer term, if you are considering this longer term trade to get Justin Jefferson, then, you could do that. But, if you're content and you're a win now team, like, why would you move it unless, you're concerned about longer-term injury with Andrews, and I don't think you should be. It's just a shoulder injury that he has 10 days to recover for. So like a mini buy almost. I'm not worried about Andrews' injuries if that's what you're trying to sell on. Oh, there we go. Do you think injuries will be anything to worry about? No. There you go, Lincoln. Quinn Vade, would you trade Devontae Adams and Mostert for JT and Michael Thomas? I would not trade those. No. Devontae Adams is going to be a top 7 wide receiver pretty much week in, week out, no matter what. And maybe top 5 now that Jamar Chase is going to be out for the next few weeks. And Mostert's been crushing as of late. Let's talk about Raheem Mostert because he wasn't on my show sheet, but I do want to just remind you that Raheem Mostert is like an athletic freak. Back when he was picked up by the 49ers, 2015, he ran at the combine, 92nd percentile 40-yard dash, 85th percentile speed score, 97th percentile burst score. He is projected to be the 8th most rostered DraftKings running back this week. His over-under for the week against Detroit is 67.5 rushing yards. I'm tempted to take the over. Detroit gives up the second most fantasy points to the running back position this week. So Mostert is a smash for right now. And then I don't know why you'd be trading high for Michael Thomas. Like, it feels like a trade high for Michael Thomas, honestly. So whoever's trying to do that is trying to offload Michael Thomas and dangle JT in front of you. No, I would keep Devontae Adams and Raheem Mostert. All right, we'll keep going with a couple more. Keep putting your questions and comments in the chat. Appreciate y'all jumping in. This is lots of fun. And speaking of the Ja'Marr Chase injury, Tyler Boyd is now a top 25 wide receiver in half PPR moving forward. Tyler Boyd gets the Cleveland defense, who gives up the 10th most wide receiver fantasy points on the season. We just saw Joe Burrow throw for over 400 passing yards. Joe Burrow, the quarterback, won last week. And maybe y'all forget, but in 2018, 2019, Tyler Boyd had back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Each of the last two seasons, even with T. Higgins there, 820 or more receiving yards. So he's had 4 straight seasons of 800 plus receiving yards. Tyler Boyd, and he's had some good weeks so far this year. He finishes the wide receiver 12 in full PPR. Week 3, he finishes the wide receiver 2 last week. And Ja'Marr Chase finishes the wide receiver 1. So it wasn't like, oh, Ja'Marr Chase's injury resulted in Tyler Boyd having this massive game. No, like, all 3 wide receivers for the Cincinnati Bengals finished in the top 24. Okay. Tyler Boyd game. I know he had a broken play, but aside from that, if you take away that broken play, still about 100 receiving yards, 7 receptions, 8 targets if you take away that one. So, yeah, I'm in on Tyler Boyd as a high-end flex consideration and can probably plug into your wide receiver 2 spot. All right. Cool. Excellent. All right, let's see what is going on in the chat. Ravi R just traded Debo and Connor and Dylan for Olave and Waddle. W or L for me. Ravi R. That's a big W. That's a massive W. I mean, Debo's out, Connor's out, Dylan is virtually out, and then you get Olave and Waddle. Oh my gosh. Yes, this is phenomenal. Olave is top 15 easily moving forward. Waddle is pretty close to the same at the wide receiver position. We don't know how long Debo is going to be out with that shoulder issue, or I think it's a hamstring issue. And then Connor has a ribs issue that's holding up this week and maybe at least 2 more weeks after this. So the only way that A.J. Dillon gets value is by Aaron Jones going down with an injury. He only played 13 snaps last week against the Commanders. That's a mistake. So, yeah, Olave and Waddle. This was very, very lopsided, Ravi. So congrats on the W. Warrior Loft asks, what is your prediction for Michael Thomas rest of season? I'm thinking about trading for him. I'm not in a hurry to use him, but in the playoffs. Yeah, Michael Thomas right now is in a void. Like, yeah, he's a roster clog for you right now, unfortunately. Hopefully you got some IR spots. Chris Olave has been absolutely crushing this year, and I don't think the Saints need to move away from Olave moving forward. Like, Jarvis Landry had a couple good games. Michael Thomas had a great start to the season, but then the injuries caught up to him, and the conditioning probably got in his way. And that's what happens when you get to be an older wide receiver too, is your conditioning goes down, your body takes some hits, and that's the reality. So I am pessimistic about Michael Thomas rest of season. I don't see him as a trade target. I probably will buy him low next year if I can, but not right now. Not looking to depend on Michael Thomas moving forward. Breathing Fantasy Football, literally. Hey, what's up? Appreciate you jumping on the live stream. What's up? Throw some comments, questions in the chat. Appreciate y'all. Or if you want to just chat too, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. Gonna be at the Bills-Packers game Sunday night. So excited. Yes. Go Pack, go. Go Pack, go. Quinn Vade is my last question until I get to a few more of the players I want to highlight in the start and sit 'em live stream. Appreciate the advice. Would you trade Mostert and Jamar for Kenneth Walker and DJ Moore in redraft? I probably would do that in redraft. Because Jamar Chase, I mean, he could be out. I love Jamar Chase. And I think my only concern with not trading him is that if he is out 4 weeks, we're talking week 13. And if you're not in the playoffs by that time, he's not going to help you anyways. So DJ Moore has a good matchup this week. He's coming off a good game. Kenneth Walker for Mostert. I think Walker is ahead of Mostert. So I think that's what I would do. I wouldn't make that trade yet. I would want more information on Jamar Chase's injury, because if you hear he's going to be on IR or if it's a longer term injury, it's just so fresh. Like, we just heard it announced today. I'm not like looking to move Jamar Chase and make a knee jerk reaction to this. I would be open to it if we hear that there's a longer term injury and the other team is like, well, I'm willing to stash Jamar Chase. Fine. If you're a winning team, maybe you hold on to him anyways, but you don't want to miss the playoffs because Jamar Chase was just hanging out on your bench, and that was the difference when you could have had DJ Moore. Okay, so there you go. Nice trade, yeah. And Pollard feels like a GPP fade for me this week. So he gets the Bears, and this might be the nice chalk, right? And I might have to eat a lot of chalk this week. Like, Mostert and Pollard should be near the top of your boards. I mean, Mostert is 8th right now in running back rostership, projected rostership per Roto Grinders. So, I mean, if Pollard isn't number 1, I don't know who's going to be number 1, but let's find out. Tony Pollard I have as a top 5 running back this week. I mean, I'm willing to go as high as 2, but I'm listening and I'm willing to distill right now, but he's going to be top 5 for me. And yes, the projected rostership for DraftKings right now is 49.4%. Holy poop. Okay. I mean, all right. I didn't know it was going to be that high. Half of teams are going to put Tony Pollard in their lineup projected by Roto Grinders. Holy guacamole. Oh, man. Yeah, I don't think you can play Pollard in GPPs. I was thinking he's going to be chalk, but that is like taking a full box of chalk and just showering yourself in chalk for days. Like 49.4%. I can't. Yeah, that's got to be one of the highest of the season. The chalkiest chalk you ever tasted. 6,100 on DraftKings. 50% projected rostership for number 1, obviously. Holy buckets. Yeah. So yes, a GPP fade. All right. Keep putting questions and comments in. I'm going to keep going through players I want to start sit-ems with, and we'll get to your questions. You know how this works. I interweave, I weave them through. So the next one is Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup, I have outside of the top 48 of wide receivers. There are 26 implied points for Dallas this week, but I don't think Dallas needs to have, a big game against the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears, in fact, are a very difficult matchup for fantasy wide receivers. They allow the 27th most fantasy points to wide receivers, and Jalen Johnson is a good defender. So, we've also seen efficiency metrics from Michael Gallup just continue to nosedive every year. And I know he's still recovering from the ACL, but he's entering game number 5. It's not like, oh, this is second game back. No, Michael Gallup is averaging 5.7 fantasy points per game. That is wide receiver 90. He has 217 air yards on the season, 86 receiving yards on 8 receptions. That's 10.8 yards per reception. In fact, if you look at 2019, 16.8 yards per reception. 2020, 14.3. 2021, 12.7. And now 10.8. Like, Michael Gallup's going to turn into Deebo Samuel by 2027 if this trend keeps up. So Michael Gallup is a massive fade this year, this week in particular, but this year he was on my fades list in the 9th round. I didn't 9th and 10th round. I didn't understand why people were saying, you need to have Michael Gallup. He's trending the wrong way. He was one of the least valuable players. And if you listen to I think it was in May, I had a fades and best ball list, one per round. All but one of them I would consider, a hit. They busted for one reason or another, whether it was injury, whether it was failure to recover from the injury, whether it was just straight up busting or failure to return on your investment. Michael Gallup, he's being ranked in like the top 35 of wide receivers on Fantasy Pros. I'm pretty sure that's true. Let me pull it up right now, but like he's not a startable option. I don't understand the love for Michael Gallup right now. I have him, as like wide receiver 51 right now. His expert consensus in half PPR is wide receiver 39. Wide receiver 39. Where are we getting Michael Gallup at wide receiver 39? Makes no sense to me. Looking at his game log even, right? He's finished wide receiver 35, 49, 62, 103. He's getting worse. Okay. And only once has he eclipsed 63% snaps on the season. It's not like he's a full-time player either. Like Noah Brown is playing in front of him a lot of times. So Michael Gallup, he needs to show it consistently before we start moving him back into the top 36, much less the top 48 of wide receivers. All right, great. Let's take a look here. Waller is questionable for this week. He is risky. Raiders run the ball a lot, chases out. Would you start Waller or Hurst? Yeah, you got to lean Hurst. I don't think Waller's going to play. That's just my feeling. I mean, Foster Moreau might plug and chug, but I don't think you're going to start Foster Moreau over Hayden Hurst, their Warrior Loft. Okay, so Pro HD, thanks for jumping in from YouTube. Start DJ Moore or Michael Carter. You're starting DJ Moore. Yeah. Okay, yeah. As Breathing Fantasy Football literally says, AJ Terrell is out. DJ Moore could smash more, and we see another decent game by PJ Walker. Yeah, and we saw last week against the Atlanta Falcons how much Joe Burrow just diced them up. And PJ Walker and Joe Burrow are not the same player at all, but it means that there are gaps and creases that a quarterback can take advantage of in this secondary, and AJ Terrell is out, of course. Okay. Lincoln Ware says, appreciate the advice, but I think I'm going to hold off on Justin Jefferson because I don't know if I'm selling low on him or selling from fair value. Weeks ago, another guy offered me CD and a first. Depends on that first, too. If it's a late first, I wouldn't even blink at it. But CD Lamb has stepped into his own. I've been pleased with what CD Lamb has been doing this year, at least from a target share perspective. He's low on the efficiency because, Cooper Rush will tend to do that for you, and Dak has dealt with the injuries. But if anything, CD Lamb is still a buy low candidate. Okay. Yeah, that's why I want to fade Pollard. Remember when Chubb was out, Hunt had a dynamic 45% chalk last year. It busted. I mean, bust games happen from time to time. Pollard, though, last time that he played 60% of snaps, finishes the running back 2 overall. That week in half PPR, he had 12 carries, 69 rushing yards. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, 6 for 69, 6 for 63 through the air on 9 targets. And yeah, this is going to be Tony Pollard week. I think so. He's got the talent. He's got the efficiency metrics to back it up. And they've got, a good run defense to run against. But in the GPP field, I think you do need to stay away from Tony Pollard. Speaking of DJ Moore, I hope he gets traded to Green Bay. So do I. So Pro HD. So do I. Okay. How many starts without Zeke has Pollard had in his career? Just one. Just one. I don't think Dak is right yet, and the Bears are more hot than cold right now. Kind of torn. Want to get into a different GPP. Yeah, don't play Pollard in GPP. 50%, that's not going to happen. Foreman seems like a great pivot against bad Falcons D. Also, Henry in spot 5% roster. Love the slate breaking potential. He hasn't super smashed yet. Yeah, Donta Foreman, as I said, ranks as a top 20 running back for me with, back end running back one upside if he gets a couple breakaway carries or breakaway. He's got better breakaway speed and efficiency metrics than what Chuba Hubbard would have had if Chuba was active, but it's going to be the Foreman show. That's what I'm projecting for Carolina. And I know Raheem Blackshear has been a name thrown around by the fantasy talking heads, but no, it's going to be Donta Foreman, the former 3rd round pick. Raheem Blackshear is not a name that you need to worry about. And EJ DM'd me on Twitter a few days ago. I'm pretty sure I DM'd back, maybe, possibly. I hope so. I do my best to try to keep up with the Twitter DMs. I think so. Yeah, EJ, I got your message. I think I replied back. Cool beans. All right. Yeah. All right. Throw more comments and questions in the chat. I'm going to keep talking about a few more players. And then as those comments come in, I'll keep weaving back and forth between those. We're going to talk about Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds is a top 40 wide receiver. Right now, he's wide receiver 35 in fantasy points per game. He's wide receiver 39 in total fantasy points on the season. He did have a bust game last week against Anthony Brown. Tough defense. He played 84% of the snaps, but looking at the last 3 games before this Dallas game, against New England, he was the wide receiver 19. Against Seattle, he was the wide receiver 9. Against Minnesota, he's the wide receiver 26. And now, as I mentioned before, this Detroit-Miami game could turn into a massive, massive shootout. And Josh Reynolds is that deep threat for Jared Goff. Yards per reception, 14.3 on the season. And the average target distance, he's 20th among wide receivers, and he's 23rd in deep targets this year, 17% target share on the season. He does play sometimes in the slot, sometimes out wide, but he's running 93% of the routes. So I think Josh Reynolds is an eyebrow-raising flex consideration, especially if you want a piece of this Detroit-Seattle game on the cheap. Josh Reynolds is a player that you should be considering here. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I want in on as well. I am worried about TJ Hawkinson. He's just not shown up lately in the games that Amon-Ra St. Brown has been there. So Josh Reynolds, I think, is the deep threat. Amon-Ra St. Brown closer to the line of scrimmage. DeAndre Swift getting run. I'm confident in this being a higher scoring game. In fact, I believe that this is the highest over under on the season, on the week for the Seattle Miami game. For reference, Miami gives up the 9th most wide receiver fantasy points on the season, and there's 24 implied points for Detroit in this game. Josh Reynolds is if you're looking for a pivot in and maybe a cheap stack to get in for the GBP bros, Josh Reynolds, 2.1% projected rostership on DraftKings, wide receiver 42. He's only 5K on DraftKings. Consider him. Okay, breathing fantasy football. Literally, I think Hunt will get traded. We'll see. We'll see what other needs happen this weekend, because lo and behold, you're going to see someone get injured. I'm not going to say names because then, I'm speaking it into the universe and then we lose somebody. But it was devastating. I'll just say the Breece Hall injury was devastating for me in a lot of leagues. He was one of my favorite 4th and 5th round draft picks. And in the video showdown, so Billy Muzio, good friend Billy Muzio, he is the number 2 Fantasy Pros accuracy rankings in season right now, and then he was the number 1 draft ranker last year. So good friend Billy Muzio, he invited me to this video showdown for the FFWC, and I was doing really well. I was tied for 2nd in record in the league, and then I was going to win. I lost last week by 2 fantasy points in PPR. I had Amon-Ra St. Brown, Breece Hall, David Njoku, and Elijah Moore all on that team. And it's a best ball. So, like, they just didn't count for my team, and they're usually starters. And I lost by 2 points that week. And now Breece Hall is out the rest of the season. So I'm in a lot of trouble. It's best ball, so you can't pick up off waivers. Yeah. So that's terrible. All right. Let's see what other questions. Yeah. If you're new to the podcast, make sure that you are hitting the subscribe button here. The red subscribe button helps me grow the podcast, help me grow the live stream, grow this community, helps each other get better. Appreciate y'all jumping in and spending this Friday night with me. Okay. Munir N. Suggest any moves the rest of the season. Half PPR 12 man. Carr, ETN, Walker, Evans, Brown, Goddard, Chubb, Cooks, Robinson, Sutton, Rachaad White, Kirk Cousins, Bateman, Jameson, Williams. See if you can upgrade that quarterback spot. Because right now, Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr are in like that quarterback 8 to 15 range. Okay, that's just where they're going to land every week is 8 to 15. Their pocket passers offer no upside in the rushing game. See what it takes to get Lamar, to get Kyler, to get Jalen Hurts, to get some quarterback that has that rushing upside. See if you can see what it takes. What would it take to get there? I'm not sure, but the biggest move I would try to go after, and maybe Hurts is your target because you have Dallas Goedert to get that stack. But yeah, I would be interested to see what it would take to get, because you have ETN, Walker, and Chubb. So I think you're in good shape there. Yeah, that's what I did. Okay. All right, EJ, you're feeling good. We're feeling good. Awesome. I'm happy that I was able to help you out there. Okay. And then Reynolds, maybe a sneaky GPP dart. Lions offense has been garbage lately, but Swift, Son Goddard back, I think it definitely is going to help for sure. All right, Big BS. Thanks for jumping in. South Park Cooks, Davis, Lockett, or Boyd. Full PPR. Thanks. Davis. I assume Gabriel Davis because Corey Davis is out this week. So I would go Gabriel Davis, Tyler Boyd, Tyler Lockett, Brandon Cooks. So Gabe Davis, Boyd, Lockett, Cooks. Cooks is questionable for this game, even though he's practiced all week. Gabriel Davis, right there, the Bills are coming off the bye. I'm really interested to see. He's made the most of his minimal path so far. He's been super efficient, catching a lot of touchdowns, lots of deep passes. Tyler Boyd is a high PPR. But in my fantasy data article this week, I identified Tyler Lockett as a fade. And I had a few reasons for that. I don't think he's going to catch a touchdown. I think that even when he's gotten high volume, he hasn't, hit those ceiling weeks so far this year. His bizarre splits. He's been on average the wide receiver 23 on the road and on average the wide receiver 57 at home, and he plays at home this week. And this is a slow pace of play game against the Giants. The Giants and Seahawks are 22nd and 21st in pace of play, so I think it's going to be slow pace of play. And then the Giants are also, they don't give up almost any fantasy points to the opposing wide receivers. I think they rank first in fewest points allowed to wide receivers on the season. So give me Gabe Davis, give me Tyler Boyd, then Lockett, and then Cooks. All right. You guys were all right on Breece. I faded him and ETN mostly on best ball. I was like 20% Breece Hall and like 33% Travis Etienne. So the Breece Hall one's gonna suck because he's out for the ACL. But Etienne, oh man, I was chips in just on both of those guys. And other than the injury, like no regrets on those. Yeah. So appreciate that. You can actually pick up players on Best Ball, started a league on Sleeper with a bunch of rookies. Yeah, in Sleeper leagues, like I think there are some options for that, but like on underdog tournaments or in drafters, fantasy or other, the FFWC has Best Ball, FFPC has Best Ball. Like there's no waivers, so you're stuck with what you have, and that's why sometimes you just want to rotate, have your regular rotation through the end of the draft. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep talking. I'm done with running backs and wide receivers. I'm going to chat about 3 tight ends tonight who you should consider in different scenarios. The first is the most obvious, and that is the elite streaming tight end, Irv Smith. Irv Smith is my tight end 5 on this week. It's because of the positive matchup. It's because Irv Smith has shown ceilings in the past, and he's increased his role from the beginning of the season till now. Each of the last 3 games that he's played 60% plus snaps, and he set a season high 69% of snaps in week 6 going into the bye week. So Irv Smith, elite streaming option. Look at last week, what Juwan Johnson was able to do against this same Arizona Cardinals defense. 5 receptions, 2 of them going for touchdowns. He finished as the tight end 2 on the week. And Irv Smith, 4 of his last 19 games, he has been not just like a tight end 1, but 4 of his last 19 games, he's been a tight end. He's been a tight end 4. He's been the 4th best tight end or better 4 of the last 19 games. If you are looking for a tight end streaming option, this is an elite option here. Irv Smith, I'm ranking ahead of my next tight end streamer, and that is Harrison Bryant. Now, Harrison Bryant, I think it has a wider range of outcomes than Irv Smith, but Harrison Bryant, we saw in 2020, one of his weeks, he finished as the tight end 1 overall. However, in games where he's played 60% of the snaps or more, he's finished on average as the wide receiver 23. With David Njoku expected to miss, I think Harrison Bryant gets closer to that 15 to 20% target share. He's been hovering at 10% in that role behind David Njoku, so he's already had some target share. It's difficult to say, you know what, I'm confident saying that Harrison Bryant is going to be the guy this week. Could he land in the end zone? Yeah, and that's why, Harrison Bryant for me as a tight end streamer is an acceptable one. I think that he's right now my tight end 9 on the week. So he's not in that elite streaming tier, but he has upside that other tight ends seem to be lacking. Like I have him ranked ahead of Dawson Knox. I have him ranked ahead of like Dalton Schultz. I have him ranked ahead of Kyle Pitts, ahead of Robert Tonyan this week. So Harrison Bryant is a streaming tight end that you can be pretty confident he's going to get target share. Jack Doyle was a top 12 tight end pretty consistently in the Jacoby Brissett era. And that's because the Colts gave Jack Doyle one of the highest target shares, with Jacoby Brissett behind center. So I think that tight end target share will continue. Harrison Bryant, the next man up, and he's already playing majority of snaps anyways, along with or alongside David Njoku. It's going to be Bryant week, and I want to be bullish on Harrison Bryant as a streaming option this week. Now, if you are extremely desperate, and you have nowhere else to turn, you're like, Bradley, I just need someone to get me something. I just need I need a tight end to run some routes. Tanner Hudson is your desperation tight end this week. Tanner Hudson's played every game for the Giants so far, but the reason why he's on this streaming desperation tight end radar is Daniel Bellinger is out with a fractured eye socket, which required surgery, and he is out indefinitely. He might miss the season. That's not official yet, but Tanner Hudson is your desperation tight end ad here. He's run double-digit routes 4 times this season. He's played 30% of snaps 4 out of 7 games so far. His season high in targets was 3 week 2 against Carolina. He had 4.2 fantasy points, finished as the wide receiver or tight end 27 that week. It's not like you're expecting upside, but if you throw a 10 to 12% target share toward Tanner Hudson, fine. Like, it's fine. Oh, this is where you say, like, if you're in a 32 team league and you just need a warm body to fill in for tight end this week. I mean, it's gross. It's gross this week at tight end. Kelsey is out. Everett's out. David Njoku is probably going to be out. Daniel Bellinger is out, right? Tanner Hudson is a desperation tight end. I can't even believe that this is the case, but here we are. All right. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Appreciate y'all jumping into my week 8 fantasy football stardom, situm live stream. It's been a lot of fun. And I see one more comment, unless any of you want to throw a few more on. I'll be on for a couple more minutes, so you can ask any questions you want on players you're having difficulty asking start sit questions on, or if you just want to keep chatting, I'm open for that for a little bit longer. Okay, so Breathing Fantasy Football literally asks, I wouldn't be surprised if Cooks is kept on the sideline this weekend and traded by the deadline. There's actually been rumors that Brandon Cooks could be traded back to the LA Rams. Wouldn't that be wild? I think that would be pretty wild. Yeah. All right. Awesome. So, yeah, if Cooks is kept on the sideline, that would be very interesting. Nico Collins didn't practice at all this week either, but he's listed as questionable. That's why, like, in extremely, extremely deep fantasy leagues, like if you're looking for an available wide receiver, I'm looking at in the Houston Texans. Oh, this gets really gross. Philip Dorsett might be the next man up for you. Oy vey. So Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, Philip Dorsett, and Tyron Johnson. The wide receiver core gets gross there. I just don't know how the Texans are going to manufacture offense if Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins are going to be out this week. Yikes. All right, everyone, that'll do it for tonight's live stream and podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate y'all. Tomorrow, I'm going to just open it up and we'll talk some of the start sit questions that we're going to do week 8 fantasy football tips next tomorrow night. If I can, I'm going to do my best to jump on and talk some fantasy football tips for week 8. And then just like last week, I'm going to see if I can get in a start sit stream going before the start of week 8. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Appreciate you. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. It really helps grow the community. Allows me to keep pumping out content. Appreciate y'all. And until next time, good luck in the fantasy football streets, everybody.